Good evening, hello and welcome. You're with the news today. This is your primetime destination, News, Newsmakers, Talking Points. The program that asks all the questions without fear or favor. The big question, why so much secrecy on the part of the Modi government when it's called a special session of parliament? Sonia Gandhi now pitted against Prime Minister Modi. Special session, will it set the 2024 agenda? What's on the menu? Also, all eyes on the G20 meet that starts in just 48 hours. Is China trying to derail the G20 summit? We'll have guests from China as well. Also, our newsmaker tonight is the Magsaysay Award winner, Dr. Ravi Kannan, who's brought affordable cancer care to a remote part of the country. But first, as always, it's time for the 9 headlines at 9. Political face-off breaks out over special session of parliament. Congress leader Sonia Gandhi writes to the Prime Minister asking him to specify the agenda of the session. The Parliamentary Affairs Minister hits back, says session being called as per the rules. US confirms President Joe Biden will attend the G20 summit. Washington calls out China for trying to block a consensus on G20. Prime Minister Modi leaves for Jakarta to attend the 20th ASEAN-India Summit and 18th East Asia Summit. Ahead of his visit, PM calls ASEAN an important pillar of India's Act East policy. Prime Minister Modi wades into the Sanatan Dharma slander, asks his ministers to respond effectively to Tamil Nadu Minister Udaynidhi Stalin based on current facts. Udaynidhi Stalin and Priyank Kharge booked for remarks on Sanatan Dharma. Udaynidhi claims he has proof of Sanatan Dharma's bias, cites President Murmu's exclusion from Parliament inauguration as an example of a caste hierarchical society. After Prime Minister Modi tells his ministers to stay away from the India versus Bharat debate, Rahul Gandhi says all names of the country, India, Bharat or Hindustan, mean love. In a huge relief to 4 members of the Editors Guild of India, Supreme Court grants them interim protection from arrest after Manipur government files FIRs against them over a fact-finding report in the state. Kaveri water dispute refuses to die down. Karnataka government tells Supreme Court it can't give more water to Tamil Nadu as the state itself is facing a huge water shortage. And Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose's grandnephew Chandra Bose resigns from the BJP. He had been critical of several policies of the party. But our top story tonight, the latest political showdown, this time over a special session of parliament that's been called by the Narendra Modi government later this month, has escalated further. Today, Congress leader Sonia Gandhi wrote to Prime Minister Modi questioning just why the government was silent on its agenda for the session that is to be held for 5 days from September 18 to 22nd. Union Parliamentary Affairs Minister Prahlad Joshi has written back, accusing Mrs. Gandhi of politicizing the issue. The minister claims the agenda for the session has never been shared in advance. So what's cooking? What really is this special session about, and why so much secrecy? Tonight, that's our top focus.
They were not there when the new parliament building was inaugurated. This time the opposition will attend the special session of parliament called from September 18th to 22nd by the Narendra Modi government. Congress Parliamentary Party Chairperson Sonia Gandhi on Wednesday wrote to Prime Minister Narendra Modi, pointing out that the session was convened without consulting the opposition. The Congress leader listed 9 topics for debate during the session. These include price rise, unemployment, farmers' demand on MSP, demand for JPC probe on Adani Group, breakdown of constitutional machinery in Manipur, communal tension in different states like Haryana, and occupation of Indian territory by China.
पहली बार हो रहा है कि विशेष सत्र बुलाया गया है और एजेंडा कार्यसूची की जानकारी हमारे पास नहीं है। 5 के 5 दिन गवर्नमेंट बिजनेस के लिए एलोकेट किया गया। तो ये नामुमकिन है, ये दुर्भाग्यपूर्ण है। हम ये सदन का बहिष्कार नहीं करेंगे।
Parliamentary Affairs Minister Prahlad Joshi has replied to Sonia Gandhi. The minister accused the Congress leader of trying to create an unnecessary controversy.
Let me remind Srimati Sonia Gandhi ji that nowhere in the past, whenever the session was called, never it was consulted before the calling the session. Calling the session is the prerogative of the government with the due consent and the permission of the President. Never agenda was disclosed in advance.
सोनिया गांधी जी ने चिट्ठी लिखी थी देश के प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी को, लेकिन जवाब दे रहे हैं प्रहलाद जोशी जी। पहले भी जब खड़गे जी ने चिट्ठी लिखी थी प्रधानमंत्री जी को तो जवाब दे रहे थे तेजस्वी सूर्या। अरे भाई, ये कौन सी संसदीय प्रणाली है? ये कौन सी मान्यताएं हैं? कौन सी मर्यादाएं हैं? कुछ तो प्रणाली आप भी फॉलो करेगा। क्या प्रधानमंत्री और उनका कार्यालय चिट्ठी का जवाब वापस देने में सक्षम नहीं है?
BJP leaders have been insisting some important work will be taken up during the special session. There is a speculation that the government might take up the Women's Reservation Bill, which has been hanging fire since 2008. India Today has learned that the special session will start in the old Parliament building on September 18th. It will shift to the new building on September 19th after the lunch. Bureau Report, India Today.
So let's raise the big questions. Why so much secrecy over this special session of Parliament? Is the special session designed to set the 2024 agenda? Is there a complete breakdown of trust today between the Modi government and the opposition? My first guest is PDT Achari, former Lok Sabha Secretary General, joins me to find out whether a special session can be called without an agenda being put in place. Dr. Achari, what is your view? Is the government which says, look, before a parliament session, we don't reveal our agenda normally, is the government right, or is it breaking with convention in calling a special session but not revealing the agenda?
See, first of all, there is no mention about a special session anywhere in the rules. The rule mentions about session, general, normal sessions. And in fact, there was a practice of calling an emergency session. It used to be done before independence. But after independence, it was not done. Emergency session. But then, the interesting thing is that when an emergency session was called, the purpose of that session used to be communicated to the members and also the public. They used to issue a communique, press communique, informing the public and the members of parliament that an emergency session is being called for this purpose. So, special session also, in a way, can be called an emergency session because it is happening between two sessions. Special, the very name implies that there is something special about this session. And what is that? What is the special thing about it? Or what is the speciality about it? So that needs to be told to the members.
How much in advance? No, how much in advance? You're saying that in the past, whenever an emergency session has been called, the purpose of the session has been put in place. We've also had special sessions, 2016 on GST. We've had special sessions, 1997, 50 years of independence. Are you saying that in each instance, how much earlier have the members to be informed?
Members have to be informed at least 15 days early. That is the normal practice. But there have been occasions when sessions were called at short notice, and the members would be informed about the session, say maybe around 4 days in advance or 5 days early. And that kind of thing used to happen. That depends on the situation. But here, the point is whether the members should have been told about the purpose of this special session. That is the basic issue.
No, so what is your view? Should the members be told what this special session is about?
Yeah. Yes, certainly. They should be told about this, the purpose of this special session, because members have a right to know. In fact, even in the regular session, when the summonses are issued to the members, certain papers would go from the secretariat to the members, indicating the general business of the House, the question hour, and things like that. All the relevant details would be supplied to the members along with the summons. Mind you, the summonses are issued 15 days earlier. So 15 days earlier, the members used to get all the relevant papers concerning the House,
Right.
and particularly the general business, the types of bills which are coming during this session, and so on. That is the practice.
So
That has been the
you're
practice.
saying the government should, in your view, inform the members. Session is starting 18th of September. We are already now on the 6th of September. You're saying within the next couple of days, you believe the government should give all the details to the members what the agenda is. Am I correct?
Yes,
Okay.
certainly.
Okay. PDT Achari, for clarifying the position, I appreciate you joining me here on the news today. Let's therefore look at the politics that's playing out. Special session. Is this going to be, as some believe, the last session? Could the Prime Minister call for an early election? Could there be a major legislative agenda, women's reservation, OBC reservation? Joining me now, Shehzad Poonawalla, BJP's evergreen spokesperson, Sanjay Jha, former Congress spokesperson with us. Appreciate both of you joining us. Mr. Poonawalla, why so much secrecy? Kya hai, daal mein kuch kala hai that the government doesn't want to come clean? You have called a special session of parliament. Surely the country and more importantly the MPs have a right to know what the special session is all about.
If your definition, Rajdeep, of a special session being secretive is the fact that the Parliamentary Affairs Minister tweeted it in three languages, official languages, English, Kannada and Hindi, and thereafter it is called a secretive session, even though he tweeted it on 31st of August, then I can only say that those who are making this allegation are hypocritical, ignorant or dubious, or all three of them.
No, what's the agenda?
I'll
Mr.
tell you.
Shehzad Poonawalla, the Parliamentary
Rajdeep,
Affairs
I am
Minister, has been
answering your
repeatedly
question.
asked what is the
Rajdeep.
agenda. He says, please wait and see. What is so
Rajdeep,
secret?
You will have to stop interrupting.
No, you
and
must
let me
answer the
allow.
question.
Yes, I will allow.
Please
you,
do.
Your
Please do.
questions
Go
have
ahead.
to be shorter, my answers have to be longer. Thank you. Rajdeep, you called Mr. Achari to speak about all of these procedures, but Mr. Achari did not tell us that which provision of the Constitution or parliamentary rules actually mandates for a pre-consultation before the summoning of a session by President of India. The President of India under Article 85 summons a session of Parliament.
Yes.
There is no documented either precedent or rule or provision. And
There is a
if one
convention,
second,
Mr. Poonawalla,
Rajdeep
Mr. Poonawalla, I
Sardesai-
will ask you the question. Convention. There is a convention in this country. When you call a special session of parliament, you inform the MPs and the country
First
what's
of all,
the agenda.
Rajdeep, you will have to let me complete.
No, please go ahead.
First of all, do you know that the Constitution doesn't speak of a special session? There is only a session, which is Article 85.
That's why I said
One
convention.
second. Now you're changing it to convention. First, I'm talking about the rules and the provision in the Constitution. Let me complete, Rajdeep. All your questions will be answered. Secondly, Rajdeep, since you said it is a convention, you said it danke ki chot pe. Please tell me the last time there was a special session before the 2017 GST session or the sessions that have been called now. Give me one instance where in the special session, the Congress party consulted and spoke to the opposition members or parliamentary political parties and then had its special session. Give me the instance. You said there was convention. One second.
1997, there was a session called for 50 years of celebration of India's independence. We were informed of it.
One second.
One minute, Mr. Poonawalla,
Now, one
I'll tell you
second.
what the problem is. The
Rajdeep, one
you must
second.
listen
You
to
must
me now.
allow me to complete. You are interrupting me constantly. Okay, you give me 45 seconds to answer, then you ask the question.
Please
Start.
answer.
First of all, Rajdeep, you told me about the 50 years session of independence, right? But please tell me, Rajdeep, in 1977, when there was a special session on extending emergency, 1991, or in 2008, when the trust vote had to be precipitated because the UPA lost support of the left, was it consulted in advance with political parties? Now, very cheekily, you are saying there is a convention. This convention has been devised by you. I am asking you, forget everything else. Even when a normal session is summoned by the president, is the norm or the rule or the provision, or did the UPA all the time talk to political parties before calling even for normal session? And secondly, let me explain to you what the parliamentary procedure actually is. A session is called, it is informed by the Parliamentary Affairs Minister, which has been done. Thereafter, the speaker who is going to preside over the session has an all-party meeting and a business advisory council. Usually it is held a few days before the
That
session.
is a regular session, Mr. Poonawalla.
There is nothing.
No, you are misleading audiences.
How am I misleading?
There is a distinction between a regular session and a special session.
Rajdeep, one second. Please tell me where is the special provision for a special session, either in parliamentary rules or constitution.
The word used by the speaker,
That may
by
be so.
the parliamentary
That is
affairs
so. Who's
minister,
saying no?
Mr.
One
Shehzad
second,
Poonawala, you will tie yourself in knots.
Rajdeep Sardesai, I will not tie myself in knots. The only way you can do that is by shouting over me, which I think your show deserves a conversation between two sane
your
individuals.
parliamentary affairs. Just a minute. No, 1 minute.
You are constantly
Sir,
interrupting
your parliamentary
me.
affairs
Rajdeep,
minister
you are
has called for a
constantly
special
bulldozing
session.
this debate by interrupting and
You're
shouting
not
over me.
answering my
You are
question.
not giving me 45 seconds to answer,
I
but
will
you are
count now.
interrupting me
45
after
seconds uninterrupted.
and I hope you'll stick to that.
Yes.
Now,
Your
Rajdeep
time
Sardesai,
starts.
when I asked you that where is the provision in constitution or in parliamentary rules about a special session mandating that opposition or political parties have to be consulted before the session is summoned, you tell me no, it's a convention. There is nothing called a special session in the constitution or in parliamentary rules. Thirdly, even during normal sessions, the UPA never followed a practice of actually consulting political parties, which is the case. The president summons, the parliamentary affairs minister informs, and thereafter the speaker has an all-party and a BAC to consult what the agenda should be, which is happening now. Now let me complete. Now let's take, for instance, the 9 issues that Sonia Gandhi has spoken of. By the way, all those 9 issues have anyways been discussed in Parliament, even in the no confidence motion. My question to you is, Rajdeep Sardesai, if they were truly interested, let's take one issue out there, Manipur. When the Charcha on Manipur happened, they ran away before the Prime Minister could speak on Manipur. Let's take the other issue, Adani. On Adani, forget everybody else. One coalition, one stand is there on Adani. Either it's Trinamool Congress or whether it is Sharad Pawar or whether it is Congress. Do they see eye to eye? Let's go to the other issue now.
No,
Rajdeep
your 45
Sardesai,
seconds is up. I had given you 45 seconds. On Adani, I will just
You have
tell our viewers.
constantly
1 minute.
interrupted
Yes,
me,
you can say
Rajdeep.
what you wish.
No,
on
it
the
is there
Adani,
for
on the
audiences to
Adani
see.
question, it was very
And
clear.
Rajdeep, 1
In
second.
fact, the name Adani was removed. It was removed by the speaker. The remarks
How
were
is that
expunged
relevant to
when
this
Rahul
discussion?
Gandhi spoke.
No, 1
You said-
second.
No,
How
one
is
minute.
that?
This government
No,
has
1
not-
second. Let's talk
this
about
government
facts.
has not spoken
Rajdeep,
on
1
Adani in
second.
Parliament.
1
This
second.
government
The
has not
Supreme Court
spoken.
has ordered a probe and is
So what?
undertaken a probe.
The
Are you
government
saying the
has not
Supreme Court's
spoken.
probe is of no value?
Sanjay Jha
No, 1
respond.
second.
No.
Are you saying the Supreme Court's probe is
Sir,
of no
you're
value?
shouting over me now.
No, you have
No.
shouted over me. You
Sanjay
have
Jha-
interrupted me.
Sir,
Rajdeep,
I will
Rajdeep,
now
1
have
second.
to ask you with all
Rajdeep,
politeness to allow Sanjay Jha to
Rajdeep, in
speak.
all politeness,
Your time
you
is over.
interrupted me.
Your
You
time is
interrupted
over.
me.
Yo,
My
Sanjay
time is not
Jha-
over. My time has come. Amrit
No.
Kal has also come. By the way,
Right.
Rajdeep, I have 10 more seconds. Just 10 more
Yeah.
seconds. Rajdeep.
Okay.
Rajdeep, I want to ask you just one question. If they are interested in sessions of Parliament, etc., they wanted a special session on COVID. When there was discussion okayed for COVID, they ran away using the issue of Pegasus. They wanted session on Mehengai. When we said okay for Mehengai ki charcha, they went to Rafale. What happened in Supreme Court on Rafale? When we spoke about the session that should be taking place in Parliament now, right now, again they have disrupted on Manipur and they have walked out when they wanted a discussion on Manipur. And on Delhi Services Bill, they came together and they sat in Parliament, but for Manipur discussion, when Prime Minister was speaking, they ran away. Okay. So who is not interested in a discussion is clear. And Rajdeep, you interrupted me in my entire opening statement while you allowed everybody else to have a few.
Nobody else has yet
and you will
spoken.
allow Sanjay Jha
Nobody
to
else.
speak
No.
uninterrupted.
Sanjay Jha will now speak. Sanjay Jha respond.
Uninterrupted,
What
I'm
is
sure.
being suggested by Mr. Poonawala is that the government has the right to call a special session. No one denies that right. But he says that even when issues are debated in Parliament, the opposition, according to him, doesn't want a serious debate on them. He cited the example of Manipur, where the opposition walked out before the Prime Minister spoke. Your response?
Rajdeep, good evening. Since somebody here is monitoring time, it is around 9:17 in my clock, and I will not basically take even 1/4 the time that the gentleman before me has done. Let me answer your question very succinctly. It's laughable, isn't it, Rajdeep? We call ourselves the mother of democracy in billboards. Narendra Modi's face is all over, plastered all over the country. We are hosting the G20 summit in a few days, and a country that is talking about being a 5 trillion economy must be part of the UN Security Council. And the viewers should know that at the moment, the Prime Minister and his government wants to convene a parliamentary special session, but nobody knows anything about it. Not the opposition, not the media, nobody at all. And I tell you what, Rajdeep, it's about time we stopped suffering this kind of authoritarian contempt from Mr. Modi's government. You know, a lot of balderdash has been spoken earlier. I will not even comment on it. But here is the short truth.
No, what's the balderdash? No. Let's cut the chase. What is it that you feel is completely unacceptable?
I'll tell you what is. When you are holding a session, a special session over 5 days, you mean to tell me that opposition leaders who represent the people of India. Rahul Gandhi from Wayanad represents voters from Kerala. There are people who are, represented from West Bengal, from Odisha, from the Northeast, from Jammu and Kashmir. They all need to be heard. Mr. Modi may be the Prime Minister because of the first past the post system. They have a majority. We appreciate that. But do you have the right to bulldoze a country just because you're the Prime Minister? I mean, Prime Ministers and political parties will come and go. Narendra Modi will come and go. India is forever. We are destroying the political culture of this country. Let me give you 2 data points here. Rajdeep, do people know that this is going to be the shortest Lok Sabha since 1952 in terms of the number of sittings? That this has been the 17th Parliament is having the lowest productivity over the last 5 years. And do you know who's been doing the filibustering? Who's been stalling Parliament? It's not the opposition. It's the government. So you have had this remarkable situation where the government of the day doesn't want Parliament to function, brings the productivity to an abysmal low, then wants to hold a special session of Parliament and tell nobody what it's going to be all about.
Okay.
They are gaslighting the opposition.
Rajdeep.
They are misleading the voters of India. I think that is insulting the collective intelligence of this country, Rajdeep.
Okay.
And I object to that. And I object to it
Okay,
not
you
just because I represent
Sanjay,
a political thought.
Okay, Sanjay Jha, you made your point strongly enough. Shehzad Poonawalla, I'll tell you what the problem is. There seems to be a trust deficit. And I'll give you an example. 2019, when Article 370 was effectively revoked, it was brought in at the last moment. There was a belief that there was another, that Jammu and Kashmir Article 370 was not on the agenda. It was slipped in just a few hours before Amit Shah ji came and spoke in Parliament. Therefore, the fear is Mr. Modi ji also wants to do the same with a special session. The name special session itself conveys, you're right, it's not there in parliamentary procedure because it's something extraordinary. So when something extraordinary is happening, surely the opposition deserves to know what it is. And then if Sonia Gandhi says, we want a discussion on the following points, why doesn't the government choose to respond perhaps directly to her rather than through the Parliamentary Affairs Minister? She wrote to the PM, the Parliamentary Affairs Minister responds. Now your response.
The only thing extraordinary in this debate is that you interrupted Sanjay Jha once when he spoke freely, and you interrupted me 10 times in every 5 seconds, which you will continue to do because you do not believe that if I am allowed to make my points, your narrative will be devastated and therefore you have a problem.
No, Mr. Jha, allow him to
problem.
complete.
Rajdeep, the problem with you is that no matter how much respect I give you on debates, the fact is that you keep interrupting me because that's the only way.
I'm giving you now 1 minute. I'm giving you 1 minute uninterrupted. Your time starts now. Answer my question. Is this government trying to slip in important legislation without consultation?
It is 9:22 and I will ask the audiences to see till 9:23 that Rajdeep does not interrupt me. Rajdeep Sardesai, in all of this narrative building that you're doing for the Congress party, please tell me in one specific terms that where is it ordained in the constitution or in parliamentary procedure that when a session, special or otherwise, and there is no categorization of such, is summoned by the president, there must be pre-facto consultation with any political party? Rajdeep has no answer. When I ask Rajdeep Sardesai, please tell me an instance where during normal sessions, the UPA consulted political parties before summoning parliament. Rajdeep has no answer.
Every special session, no.
It is not 9:23. You again have interrupted.
You are making a factual error.
Against. You correct that in your turn. Sanjay Jha spoke gibberish. Sanjay Jha spoke gibberish. You did not interrupt him. You interrupted me saying it's a factual error. Who are you to tell me it's a factual error? You corrected on your time. 9:23. You are interrupting me once again. Audiences must listen that Rajdeep does not allow Shehzad Poonawalla to complete one statement, and in the name of fact-checking me, by the way, your fact checks we've all seen. So Rajdeep, let me complete. Now, can I have till 9:24 because you wasted 1 minute?
Please.
Thank you. Rajdeep did not tell me a specific instance where UPA would consult opposition parties or political parties before summoning a session. Rajdeep tells me it is convention. When I tell Rajdeep that there were special sessions called in 77, 91, 2008, where was the opposition or political parties consulted? Rajdeep does not come up with the answer. Rajdeep, can you tell me whether the agenda was informed before the 1977 special session?
You want to go back
no?
to the emergency?
I am not going back to 1977. Emergency was lifted. So please get your facts right, Mr. Fact Checker.
Point to you,
Rajdeep, again you are interrupting.
No, because
audiences Fifth interruption in this session, Sanjay Jha, one interruption.
Okay,
please
go
see the bias and the hypocrisy.
Go ahead.
Now, Rajdeep, after breaking my flow multiple amounts of time, please tell me, Rajdeep, that has the Parliament or has the Parliamentary Affairs Minister said that as is the rule and provision of Parliament and the convention, that there will be an all-party meeting and a BSc where the agenda will be hammered out with political parties just before the session, won't be done? Then in what capacity are you saying that it's a secretive session? If it is done by the UP in the same manner, Rajdeep Sardesai says it's fine. When the BJP does it, it is not fine because you have double standards. And Rajdeep Sardesai, let me make a larger political point. You know when democracy is actually taken for a ride? It is when Parliament is suspended under emergency. Rajdeep Sardesai, it is when the Andhra bill is brought and mics and lights and everything is shut off and members of Parliament, 18 of them are suspended. It is when the UPA government has time and again trampled upon parliamentary rights and parliamentary privileges, and you had not a word to offer. But let me, Rajdeep, ask you one question, that what is the problem? If you want these discussions to be held on these 9 issues, it was held even in the previous sessions. Is it not true that Congress wanted a discussion on Mehengai? They ran off to Rafale in 2018-19. Is it not true that the Congress wanted a discussion?
So what's the special session about? What's the special session about?
Well, Rajdeep,
what is it about?
Gold standard of journalism is being pursued by you. You have 4 agendas. Your Aaj Tak in the morning says UCC. Then in the afternoon it says women's reservation. Then you say one nation, one poll. Then you say Bharat ka naam badal ke, India ka naam badal ke Bharat ho raha hai. So Rajdeep, there's so much democracy that you are speculating 4 agendas and all 4 are supposed to be correct. But Rajdeep, let me tell you. 10 seconds more. 10 seconds more.
Yeah.
Rajdeep Sardesai, you, despite your best efforts, are not an MP. Me or Sanjay Jha are not MPs. And therefore, the first right of the privilege of people knowing will be the parliamentarians who will be duly invited for an all-party meeting and a BSc. They will know what the agenda is. Probably some of them will call you and tell you. So Rajdeep Sardesai, please stop interrupting. Or if you want to interrupt Sanjay Jha equally.
Final minute, Mr. Jha, because otherwise I will be accused. You will accuse me of not giving you enough time. 60 seconds. Your time starts now.
With interruptions.
Rajdeep, I'm a big believer that the length of the talk is not directly correlated to its content or intelligence. So don't worry about that. I will not complain at all about how much time I get. The larger point is, and I need to say it with responsibility on your show, what do you expect from an authoritarian leader? Why are we getting so, kind of appalled at the way Modi's government is functioning? I want to say so that is a fascist playbook. Destroy the opposition, make them irrelevant, don't even bring them into conversation. What you're seeing is political arrogance of the worst kind. Narendra Modi and the BJP believe that outside of the 37% vote share, all the MPs in parliament, including those in the NDA, don't matter. I mean, that is how he did demonetization, right? Everybody knows. His own cabinet didn't know what was going on. So the bottom line is this. Here is a prime minister and a party that wants to polarize us even with India and Bharat. Can you imagine? You're so divisive in your character that the manifestation is that we are discussing today that has on a whimsical or some capricious mood. Narendra Modi says, I may get an electoral advantage by positioning Bharat as opposed to India. Well, there you have it.
Okay.
Mohan Bhagwat 4 days ago says in a
One
speech...
second, Rajdeep. Now you didn't fact check them. Has any of the government agencies said that the name of India is being replaced with Bharat? Both are constitutionally ordained. Here is the biggest lie that has been spread on your channel. Yet Rajdeep, the quintessential fact checker, did not say a word when Sanjay Jha said that. Sanjay Jha gets to say a lot of things. 1 second now, Rajdeep.
No. Your time is up.
The truth is uncomfortable. Rajdeep, 1 second. Rajdeep, 1 second. When the UPA does... No, Rajdeep, your...
Seconds over.
Your time is not over,
so
Rajdeep.
much,
Hypocrisy should be coming to an end.
You can call me what you want, hypocrite. My job. Okay, fair enough.
Right, it was.
Okay, let's move on. I appreciate my guest joining us. We still don't know what the special session will be about, but Shehzad Poonawalla says India versus Bharat is not an issue. The government has made no attempt to rename the country. So some reassurance being given there by Mr. Poonawalla. Let's turn therefore to the other big story that's coming in. Remember, all eyes now on the G20 summit that begins this weekend. Chinese President Xi Jinping, though, is skipping that G20 summit, and it's put a focus on strained relations between China and India. Today, America issued a veiled warning saying China should not be looking in a way to prevent the session from actually proving to be useful. Take a look at tonight's other big story.
India is all set to welcome world's top leaders to the G20 summit. But one leader will be conspicuous by his absence. Chinese President Xi Jinping. China is instead sending Premier Li Qiang to attend the summit. The absence of President Xi, who interacted with Prime Minister Narendra Modi at the recent BRICS summit, puts the focus on the strained ties between the two countries ever since Chinese aggression in the eastern sector.
I think at different points of time in G20, there have been some presidents or prime ministers who, for whatever reason, have chosen not to come themselves. But that country and that country's position is obviously reflected by whoever is the representative on that occasion.
While India has played down President Xi's absence, China is trying to torpedo a consensus on G20 statement. Sources tell India Today the Chinese delegation is objecting to even minor clauses. According to sources, Beijing is opposing the inclusion of summit motto Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam in the statement. China is also trying to block the Millets and Other Ancient Grains International Research Initiative, claiming its short form, Maharishi, is a Sanskrit word for sage. Beijing argues local words are not included in G20's statement. The United States has called out China for playing the role of a spoiler.
Really, that's up to China. If China wants to come in and play the role of spoiler, of course that option is available to them.
China's obstructionist approach is affecting the overall efficacy of the G20 as a platform for global cooperation. The grouping is already affected by the divide between the West and Russia over the Ukraine war.
President Xi Jinping is sending a strong message to India that it is not business as usual, that things are not normal, and resolution of the border crisis is a far cry. It seems like China is trying to send a message not just to India but to the world on a divided world that the global community today looks like and is. China certainly is playing a spoiler, like the United States of America has said. In New Delhi, Geeta Mohan for India Today.
So our big question tonight, is China really trying to derail the G20 summit? What's the Chinese game plan? Joining me now is Einar Thangen, American-Chinese political and economic affairs commentator from Beijing. And I'm joined by Shrikant Kondapalli, Dean of School of International Studies, Professor of China Studies at Jawaharlal Nehru University, and Brahma Chelani, Strategic Affairs expert, joining me. First to you there in China, Einar Thangen. What is the message that Xi is sending out by not coming? You've got the Americans also suggesting it's most disappointing not to have the Chinese president here. What's the big message coming out?
Well, I don't think anybody is surprised that the Biden White House is trying to vilify China. That's not something new. It happens every day. In terms of Xi Jinping, I mean, there's been some disappointment from Beijing side. They believe that the G20 is supposed to be about mapping out a number of consensus points for the kind of economic malaise that we're in. I mean, there's so many issues out there, from climate change to debt issues. There are so many countries now that are in civil unrest. We've had a number of coups in Africa. China believes that the G20 should be about the rest of the world, not partisan issues, certainly not about the border issue between China and India, not about legitimizing Kashmir or changing the name. Now, I know
so all
that
the more, then why should the Chinese president not attend? This is a multilateral summit. Keep all your differences aside, and at least in a multilateral summit of this kind, make your presence felt.
Well, I think I can't speak for Xi, but it appears that he wants to make this about economics, which is why he's sending Mr. Chang in, because he is in charge of the economics side. If Xi goes there, he feels that it looks like he feels that the communique will be hijacked by India's desire to get some concessions on the border dispute.
Brahma Chelani, what's your sense? Is there a message being sent by Xi not coming to the summit? And is this an attempt by China to ensure that there is no consensus at the end of G20?
China's playing of the role of the spoiler at the G20 summit goes well beyond Xi Jinping's non-attendance. For example, in the pre-summit deliberations to finalize the New Delhi summit's outcome, China has sought to block debt relief for heavily indebted nations. After all, China has been employing debt trap diplomacy for a long time. But the Sino-Indian border crisis is also casting a shadow on G20. It would have been odd for Xi Jinping to visit New Delhi without seeking to defuse the border confrontation with India, which was triggered by China's stealth territorial encroachments into Ladakh in April 2020. For the past 41 months, tens of thousands of troops on each side have been facing off along the Indo-Tibetan border. By deciding to skip the G20 summit, Xi Jinping may be doing India a favor. It would have been particularly galling to India had Xi Jinping visited New Delhi, even as China's border aggression continued. The risk of the ongoing border confrontation escalating to intense bloody clashes or even a limited border war can no longer be discounted given the large-scale forward military deployments by both sides. One would have expected the invitation to Xi Jinping to attend the G20 summit to catalyze efforts to defuse the dangerous confrontation. In fact, in the military-to-military talks that were held a few weeks ago, the Indian and Chinese sides tentatively came to a broad understanding to defuse the border crisis in a gradual manner. But at the political level, the Xi Jinping regime recoiled from concluding a deal with India. And when Modi and Xi Jinping met at Johannesburg, China issued a statement that undiplomatically claimed that the meeting was held at Modi's request, a claim India said was untrue. The fact is that Xi Jinping has been wearing his intransigence on his sleeve. He created the border crisis by ordering the stealthy territorial encroachments in Ladakh. And now he refuses to climb down to some extent to end the border confrontation.
So you think this is part of Xi escalating in a way the sense of tension that still exists on the border? Professor Shrikant Kondapalli, Dean of School of International Studies, Professor of China Studies at JNU, do you agree with that? That Xi is sending out a message that I'm not doing business with India at the moment. I will continue to sort of create this sense of tension at the border and allow that to possibly even escalate, according to Brahma Chelani.
I think that the dispute at the border is at a bilateral level, while the G20 is at a multilateral level. I think we need to distinguish between these two, bilateral and multilateral. If you see the BRICS meeting in Johannesburg or other multilateral attendance by the leaders, they have maintained that decorum in terms of dividing these as bilateral and multilateral issues. But I think that Xi Jinping is skipping this meeting primarily for two reasons. One, the Chinese isolation that is quite possible after President Putin declared on August 28th that he would not be visiting New Delhi for this meeting. China would have been isolated, Xi Jinping specifically, in the G20 process, because since Bali, it has become 2:18, 2 meaning here China and Russia versus the rest of the other 18 members of the G20. So this is the worst case scenario for China, which also perhaps will influence Li Qiang's presence when he comes to attend the G20 meeting. So I think the isolationism is very, very important in the Chinese foreign policy that needs to be avoided. And I think that is one. Second, of course, there is the health issues. If you look at those videos in Johannesburg, Xi Jinping was walking as if he had so many issues, health issues, and he skipped the BRICS Business Forum meeting. So it indicates that, and he did not visit many other countries in the last few months after the Moscow visit in March and the Johannesburg visit. So he has been cancelling many of the visits. So I think it is one other aspect of that.
Right. Can I just get Aina back on this? Aina Tangen, do you believe that China and Russia are now getting slowly isolated within the G20? Is that how China sees it? That the other 18 countries are coming around on critical issues, including Ukraine, and China and Russia are getting isolated?
Well, I think it's a mistake to say that the G20 is supposed to come together. They're supposed to issue joint communiques on what they can agree on. You can certainly come up with lots of paranoid ideas about conspiracies, etc. But the facts are very simple. India, as the leader, needs to come to create some sort of joint communique. So far, in this G20 cycle, they have not. So this is the last chance. Modi and India were counting on showing diplomatic chops, the ability to get people together. And right now, it doesn't seem that way. Remember, the G20 was created to deal with the last financial crisis. And unfortunately, this time around, it has not been able to do that. And what you've seen is in this kind of vacuum, you've seen the BRICS come forward. Now, at the BRICS meeting, all of the individuals, India included, Russia, China, Brazil, etc., were able to agree to add more members. I think there's a tremendous amount of cooperation shown there. So this idea that Xi Jinping is sick or that this is all some sort of charade, I think is incorrect. I don't think that China is concerned about its image right now. It's more concerned about the economic realities at home, and they would like to see a world that is more peaceful because they depend on trade.
Okay.
So they're not interested in the kind of wars that are going on in Ukraine. They're certainly not interested in more conflicts elsewhere, as they've demonstrated by trying to bring countries together in the Middle East, Iran and Saudi Arabia in particular, and in other areas. So I think India and China actually have the same ideas, but local politics is getting in the way, especially for with the election coming up next year.
Final word, 1 minute to go. Professor Chelani, what's your sense? That are the Chinese going to block any kind of consensus at G20? And is that really the reason, in a way, that China wants to send out a message in the way that they have?
Well, there are two issues. One issue goes beyond the New Delhi summit. The G20 faces a crisis because of the growing international divisiveness. Sharpening geopolitical competition is making it difficult for the G20 to help coordinate policy for the global economy. This was on full display at the last summit in Bali, and the New Delhi summit will also mirror the widening international divisions. But there is also a more fundamental issue. It is the Sino-Indian rivalry. The Sino-Indian rivalry is impeding efforts to unite the global South. It's also going to impede efforts to transform BRICS into a credible alternative to the G20 and the G7. And then there is the issue of the border confrontation between India and China. Xi Jinping seems caught in a military crisis of his own making. He may want to resolve the crisis, but without losing face. His efforts to compel India to buckle have come a cropper. The only way to end the military standoff is through a deal to implement a sequential process of disengagement, de-escalation, and de-induction of rival forces. But no deal is possible without the aggressor willing to settle matters.
Okay, so you're saying, in a way, the ball is in the Chinese court at the moment, and China has to decide which way it's going to turn, and G20, in a way, could well see the isolation, some believe, of China and Russia. We'll wait and see how that plays out, but I appreciate my guest joining me here on our other talking point tonight. Let's take a break. When we return, we are turning to our Good News Today story. This is a remarkable individual that you must listen to. Oncologist Dr. Ravi Kannan has won the Raymond Magsaysay Award for Public Service. We'll tell you just why he's changing the face of a remote corner of the country. Back in a moment. By him after these messages.
हूँ सना और आज मैं आपको मिलाने वाली हूँ बॉलीवुड सुपरस्टार से। लेकिन पहले देखते हैं उनकी आने वाली फिल्म की झलकियाँ।
ये तो शुरुआत है। गुड टू गो गर्ल्स। हाय, मैं हूं शाहरुख खान। आपके लिए लेकर आया हूं मेरी नई फिल्म जवान और मेरे साथ हैं आज तक एआई।
थैंक यू शाहरुख। अच्छा बताइए, मुझ में और आप में कौन सी बात कॉमन है?
वैसे तो बहुत कुछ होगा, लेकिन आप बताइए ना।
चलिए मैं बता देती हूँ। शाहरुख खान और मुझ में ये बात कॉमन है कि हम दोनों हमेशा जवान रहेंगे।
बिल्कुल। वैसे एक और बात कॉमन है।
कौन सी?
आप सब ने दोनों का नाम तो सुना होगा।
थैंक यू शाहरुख। वैसे आपका चार्म देखकर तो मेरे एआई दिल में भी कुछ कुछ होता है। और हाँ, आई एम ऑल्सो 100% रेडी फॉर जवान विद द किंग खान 7 सितंबर को आपके नजदीकी सिनेमा घरों में।
आर यू रेडी?
Welcome back. Let's turn to our newsmaker tonight, and he is a very special guest. Tonight, Dr. Ravi Kannan, renowned oncologist, has been just selected last week for the Raymond Magsaysay Award 2023 for his contribution in the health sector. Dr. Kannan left his job in Chennai to help the people in Assam, Silchar and Kachar district fight cancer in 2007. Once in Assam, he found cancer patients were not returning for treatment, and he implemented several low-cost cancer treatment measures to ensure that these individuals could undergo the necessary treatment, including providing ad hoc employment to family members of the patient to ensure they didn't feel any financial burden. He also sent hospital staff to villages to teach families how to take care of patients at home. He's a remarkable individual, and we are very privileged to be joined by Dr. Kannan. First of all, sir, congratulations for the Raymond Magsaysay Award. You must be mightily pleased that your work on providing affordable cancer care in a remote corner of the country is being recognized now internationally.
Thank you. But I think it's not really about me. I think it's about, 450 colleagues of mine in the hospital, about the society that created the hospital, about the community that supports us, about people in the region, in other parts of the country and elsewhere, people who've never seen the place, never seen the people there, but who are willing to support, to bring about change in the lives of fellow human beings. I think that's the spirit the award recognizes. I don't think it's really about me.
No, you're being very modest, Dr. Kannan. Not too many people would leave a very comfortable life as a doctor in Chennai to then go and work with a cancer hospital and research center in a remote corner of Assam and then help build that into an institution, a movement. So it's your journey that is inspirational in a way. How did you see your move from Chennai to Assam? What really drove you to do that?
So the hospital was started by a local society. Lay people got together and created a society because those days the nearest hospital was in Guwahati, which is about 350 kilometers away. Even today, sometimes it may take us as much as 20 hours to travel there. And so that was a disincentive for people to go and access treatment and complete treatment. And so they formed a society, and the former director visited a number of cancer hospitals to see how a hospital should be run. I used to work at the Cancer Institute in Chennai, and he spent some months with us, and then he was in regular touch because he used to keep referring patients across. And when I left the institute, one day he called for something, and one thing led to the other. And then I invited us to go and join them. At that time, all we knew was bomb blasts and floods, and my wife Sita said, we will not go to Assam. But they kept calling again and again, writing letters, and so we went on a visit. And then I spent time in the hospital, and Sita they took Sita around the community, around the hospital. We went looking at schools, and the school principals were so supportive. And so before we could come back, my wife said, there's a lot of need here. This is what we should be doing. And so when we came back, she resigned from work. She initiated the discussion in both our homes, and we came here.
That's quite remarkable, because what you've done in the process, you filled an important gap. There are large parts of the country, not just in the Barak Valley, but across India, that don't have access to affordable cancer care, because a lot of the best cancer hospitals in this country are only situated in the big cities. Is that the change that you would really like to see, that affordable cancer care now spreads to every corner of this vast country?
Definitely. Definitely. Where you're born and where you live should not dictate how you live or whether you live at all. Everywhere, the access to care has to be uniform.
In that sense, do you believe that we still have a long way to go as a country, and that we need to prioritize providing affordable cancer care? That should be the priority, in a way, of a public health system.
Definitely. We have a long way to go, but we are on the road. These changes will not happen overnight. It may take several years, maybe sometimes much longer, but eventually we will get there. If the vision is there and if the intentions are there, we will get there eventually.
But what for you in this journey, Dr. Kannan, has been your biggest learning, or should I say your biggest source of satisfaction? What's the biggest learning first?
The biggest learning for me is that just providing low-cost care, boarding and lodging will not ensure that people will actually come and accept treatment. For poor people, many of them are daily wage earners. And for them to come and accept cancer care takes a very long time. And for them to actually come and accept treatment and complete it has several hurdles. And over the years, one by one, we never had a master class on this. And so each time we find a problem, we address it and we move on. And so our biggest learning is, and the bigger thing is, poor people are also afraid of going to hospitals. Many times we tell them, we blame them for coming late, but they're actually afraid when they have a problem, a healthcare issue. They're afraid of going to hospitals because they think the expenses will drive them out of pocket, that they will be on the streets, and so they will defer till they cannot bear it any longer. And so to promote health, to promote health-seeking behaviors, we have to educate them about cancer, about various other diseases, but also instill confidence in them that when they go to a hospital, they will not be out of pocket, that there are resources available in the hospital, in the community, that will help them access and complete care. And so confidence building for patients is as important as providing care itself.
Fascinating, doctor. What about the biggest source of satisfaction in all these years? What's your biggest satisfaction?
So actually, on one hand, I have colleagues, younger colleagues who join me and who grow as professionals, who grow in their maturity in handling people. And that is one major cause of satisfaction. The other major cause of satisfaction is to see how the community changes, transformation that happens in front of our eyes, because in some part, because of the work that we do, that people come more often, they come to the hospital and they see 10 years ago, not even 30% of our patients were completing treatment. Today, a majority, almost 70-80% of patients complete treatment. Earlier, almost 90-95% of patients used to come with very advanced cancers. Today, some of them have started coming with earlier cancers. Patients feel free to come and tell us that they don't have resources and they need support. So all this transformation is an immense source of satisfaction.
How are you going to celebrate, though, Dr. Kannan? Or have you already celebrated after knowing, how are you going to celebrate now that you won this award, the money that will come? How do you intend spending it, doctor?
I am not celebrating, but in the community, in the city where we live, there's a lot of ownership for this award. People feel recognized, people feel validated. And that is very, very satisfying. That so many people feel involved in what is happening and they take ownership for the recognition is very gratifying. Believe me, more than what is happening to me, to see people celebrate is a great source of happiness. And we are trying to reach out to the community. We are trying to take cancer care as close to their homes as possible. And I'm hoping that this recognition will help us move forward in that direction with greater speed.
A final question. Are you hopeful that the model you've created in a small place of Assam will now spread across the country, that affordable cancer care will in the next decade spread to every part of the country? Is that the hope and dream?
So we are a continent, and so we cannot have a one-size-fits-all solution. But this could be one of the models with modifications based on the geography and the location that could help make cancer care more universally available and acceptable.
Right. Well, Dr. Kannan, as I said, you've been truly an inspiration, and may many others follow your path in providing affordable health care to disadvantaged communities across this country. That really would make India a better place. Continue to inspire many others, Doctor. Thank you very much for joining me here.
Thank you.
On the news
I also
today.
believe the medical profession is one of the best professions in the world. Thank you very much.
It surely is. It surely is. Thank you so much for joining me. Okay, let me leave you with our image tonight. Delhi is decked up, all set, the national capital to host the G20 summit on the 9th and 10th of September. We leave you with the visuals of the Supreme Court of India illuminated with a tricolor ahead of the global summit. Those images are going viral on social media. My small quibble, I wish Delhi would look as lovely as it is every day of the year, not just when there is a VVIP gathering. Certainly the air of Delhi deserves to be fresh 365 days of the year. Will that ever happen? Well, we only live in hope. Umeed pe duniya कायम hai. Thanks for watching. Stay well, stay safe. Good night, Shubhratri. Jai Hind, Namaskar.